Okay, so we are on chapter 2, in-class exercises, and this is going to be number 3. Mickley Company's predetermined overhead rate is $14 per direct labor hour, and its direct labor wage rate is $12 per hour. The following information pertains to job A500. So direct materials, direct labor. So here it says, what is the total manufacturing cost assigned to job A500? So what are the three things that go into total manufacturing cost? Direct materials, direct labor, and overhead. So first thing we have to do is find the total direct labor hours. So we know that they had direct labor of 108, right? Because that's given. And then we also know that they pay their employees $12 per hour. So if we divide those two, we can figure out how many direct labor hours it took to make job A500. So it's 9 total direct labor hours. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that 9 direct labor hours and we are going to calculate our total manufacturing cost. So we know our direct materials, right? They gave us 230. We know how much direct labor was. Here it is, 108. We'll just say equals 108. And then now we need to figure out how much manufacturing overhead was applied. So we know how many direct labor hours, 9, times, what's our predetermined overhead rate? 14, right? So that's 126. So in order to get our total manufacturing cost, we add these three together. 464. All right, so we have that down here. We're going to put this in here, 464, total manufacturing cost assigned to job A500. So then it says, if job A500 consists of 40 units, what is the average cost assigned to each unit? So all we're going to do is we're going to take that 464 and divide it by 40. So 464, so we got that total manufacturing cost from answer 1. And then we know it's 40 units. And so our unit product cost is going to be 1160. Oh, 1160. Okay, we are on chapter 2, in-class exercises, number 3. So what are they asking us? We are required to find the total manufacturing cost assigned to job A500. So we know that total manufacturing cost always equals direct labor, direct materials, and overhead. Okay, so let's see what information they give us. So they give us direct materials and direct labor, but then they say Mickley Company's predetermined overhead rate is $14 per direct labor hour, and its direct labor wage rate is $12 per hour. Okay, so we're going to have to figure out how many hours it took to make job A500. So let's see, step 1, find total direct labor hours required for job A500. So we know direct labor costs were 108, given here, direct labor. We know that the direct labor wage per hour is $12 per hour. So now all we're going to do is we're going to figure out how many hours. So that direct labor cost divided by direct labor wage. So total direct labor hours for job A500 is 9. So step 2, we're going to calculate the total manufacturing costs assigned to job A500. So we know what the direct materials were because that's given, direct materials. We know direct labor because that was also given. So now we're going to have to take our direct labor hours, which we just calculated as 9, and multiply by our predetermined overhead rate, which is $14 per hour. So we're going to take the sum of all three of those, which in this case is 464. And so that's going to be our total manufacturing costs, 464, for job A500. So then it says if job A500 consists of 400 units, what's the average cost assigned to each unit included in the job? So if we know that the total manufacturing costs were 464 and there were 40 units, all we're going to do is divide. So we're going to take our 464 that we got from step 1 and just divide by the total number of units. That's going to be 1160. Okay, we're just going to check our work just to make sure we didn't make any mistakes. 464, 1160. Excellent. For this question. And we will go on to number 4, sorry. Journal entry worksheets. So, Larned Corporation recorded the following transactions for the just completed month. So we're going to have to go back to our debits and credits. So it says 80,000 in raw materials were purchased on account. So we definitely know that our debit is going to go to raw materials because we bought raw materials and we bought an asset, so that's going to be a debit. And it says we paid on account, so that's just going to be accounts payable. So that's going to be our credit. Okay. Let's see if we can check our work here. It's not complete, but we got that portion right. So let's go to number 2. So it says 71,000 in raw materials were requisitioned for use in production. Of this amount, 62,000 was for direct materials and the remainder was for indirect materials. So whenever we see the word requisition, it means it's going to come out of raw materials. So we know that raw materials is going to be a credit because it's leaving. So then we're going to have to figure out what to debit. So it says 62,000 was for direct materials. So we know that that's going to go to work in process. And the remainder was for indirect materials. So we are going to put that to manufacturing overhead. It requires a number. So this is going to be 62,000. We are going to put it to manufacturing overhead because it's going to stay in manufacturing overhead because it's an estimate until the end of the month. So 9,000. Okay. So our debits equal our credits. Let's just check our work. Yep, so far so good. Total labor wages of 112,000 were incurred. Of this amount, 101,000 was for direct labor, and the remainder was for indirect labor. So whenever we see direct labor, direct materials, we know that this is going to go to work in process. Right? So it's 101,000 because it's going to help build whatever we're building. And then we know the difference, the remainder, which is indirect, is going to go to manufacturing overhead. So that's 11,000. 112 minus 101. But what are we going to credit? We're going to credit wages payable because it was all for direct labor. Sorry, for labor. So we're going to credit wages payable because we're going to have to pay our employees for both direct and indirect labor. Okay, so far so good. And let's see what our last journal entry is. Additional manufacturing overhead costs of 175,000 were incurred. Well, so we definitely know this is manufacturing overhead. So we'll put it 175. And we'll see what our options are for credit accounts. Nothing looks, I think it's going to be various because it doesn't say how they were paid for. So it's probably a credit to various accounts. So let's see. Yes, so now we're all set. Well, here, let's quickly review. So if you haven't had Accounting 1 in a little while and you need some practice with debits and credits, I will put up a separate file that sort of walks through how the debits and credits work and how it gets from raw materials to work in process to finished goods. Okay.